The conspiracy charge that said that James Finch and I had entered into some type of conspiracy for his work in Lynn Haven. And the second charge was a bribery charge stating that he had given me a motorhome in exchange for this conspiracy that I had entered into with him. So those were the two charges that were left. And the plea, there was no deal, because what was sort of hinted at was that maybe because they were getting me to plead guilty that I was going to turn as a witness against James Finch, which is generally what a plea deal is about. Mm-hmm. So there was no plea deal, there was just a plea. There was a guilty plea. The news media also said that I pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. It may sound like semantics, but law is all about semantics. It's all about words. It's all about sentences. I pled guilty to the charge of a lie to the FBI. And if you've watched the news in recent months, it's very similar to the case of General Flynn. General Flynn thought that he was helping with an investigation, which is what I thought that I was doing, and we'll get to that as we tell the story. But the night the FBI came to my house, they did not tell me that I was under oath. They did not tell me that what I said could be used against me. And they certainly didn't tell me that just because I said something that was the truth, that they could later say it was a lie and it would become a lie. So I pled guilty.
What is interesting, Margo, is the FBI came knocking on your door August, I believe it was August.
November. And we'll have to go back to that to get
I might be thinking of a different date. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. So back to the guilty plea. 2 weeks before Mr. Finch and I were to go to trial, they called my attorneys and said they wanted to talk with us, that they had a proffer meaning a deal. I didn't even want to go to the meeting. I said, no, absolutely not. The lawyers said we needed to go to hear what they had to say. So we went. We had all these charges dropped. And so what they told me, and I'll just quote him because I've written the book and I know exactly what he said. Assistant U.S. Attorney Justin Keene looked at me across the table with my two attorneys as witnesses. And he said, you know, juries are unpredictable, Miss Anderson. And you're facing, on any one of these counts, the two counts, you're facing up to 20 years. That's the charge. Of course, we wouldn't go for 20 years, but we would go for 150 to 188 months, which if you add that up is about 12 years, and I'm 68 years old. So you do the math there. And then they said, but if you will plead guilty to a false statement to the FBI, we will drop those two charges. We will offer you 0 to 6 months, and with a 2-point reduction, they have a point scale, with a 2-point reduction, which would take it down to 4, and you might not serve any time at all, and a year of probation at most. That's what we would ask the judge to do if you plead guilty. And so my two attorneys had told me to say nothing in this meeting, that I was not to say, I have not said anything for 4 years. I said, say nothing. And I had a yellow pad that I brought with me to write on, just to keep busy. And I wrote no in big letters, and the attorney put his hand over the big no that I wrote. And the other U.S. attorney never would make eye contact with me as Mr. Keene spoke. And then he said, you don't have to make your decision today. You can think about it. This was on Thursday. He said, well, you can wait until Monday, and we're 2 weeks away from trial. And he said, but you're going to be facing 2 trials. He said, because if you and Mr. Finch walk out of this trial on February 27th, acquitted, as soon as you come out onto the courthouse steps, we are going to bring back the charges against you for ECS and world claim, which we'll get to later, and we will indict you again. I had been indicted 4 times at this point. It was almost 5 years of my life since this all started. And I was just so upset and so angry, thinking that I had no reason not to believe them. And people will say, well, and actually when I was in court, the judge said, were you coerced? Were you threatened? So I'm not going to say that out loud. I was not coerced or threatened because I knew what I was doing. And they also told me exactly what they were going to do, and I had no reason to doubt them since they had indicted me 4 times already. If they were to have indicted me again, assuming that James and I were acquitted on the 27th, I would be looking at another 2 or 3 years probably of fighting them with the attorneys. And I want to say very publicly, I wanted to say it at the beginning, James Finch and I have been friends since childhood. And no one counted on him standing beside me the way he did. He's the best friend that anyone could ever have in this life. And he spent almost $1.5 million standing beside me and defending me. And people made all kinds of ugly comments about that. But the last month before we were to go to trial, just so you know what it costs to fight the federal government when they come after you, my legal bills for February of 2023 were almost $250,000 that Mr. Finch paid for me. And I could not see this going any further. I had reached a point mentally, emotionally, my family, I can't even describe it to you, 5 years of it. And they told me not to discuss it with anyone. My attorney said, don't go talk to you. Don't tell James Finch about this. Don't tell anyone about this. This is your decision. Well, as soon as I got in the car, I called James Finch. Good. All the way to Panama City. I talked about it to him and I said, this is what they're dealing. I was yelling on the phone. I was so angry and so upset. And we talked about it. And I will tell you that he told me if I wanted to keep fighting, that he would stand beside me. But he said to me, you need to be out of this. He said, if they're giving you a way out, my attorneys had already told me, they said, you know, this is probably the best that's going to happen. And I started thinking about, I'm 68 years old. I have grandchildren. I have a husband who's 78 years old. And I had already lost my mom, and I'll talk about that again. 7 months after I was indicted, my mom had a very severe and unexpected heart attack. I lost my mom in this, and it was devastating. So I prayed about it, and I prayed about it, and I thought about it, and all I could think about, like all of us think, is, oh, won't the media have a heyday with this? The mayor has pled guilty. She's been guilty all along.
Former Lynn Haven Mayor Margo Anderson has pled guilty to 1 count of making a false statement to a federal agency. It was a straight-up guilty plea. As a result of that plea, Anderson could face up to 5 years in prison. She's also prohibited of talking to her co-defendant, Phoenix construction owner James Finch, but she will get that RV back that the FBI confiscated.